Okay, good morning. My name is Shannon Brennan, and this is my action research project titled The Effect of DEI Professional Development on Behavior Management and School Culture. So to start out, the problem that inspired me to launch this action research project was generally student misbehavior around our country, and specifically student behavior at my school site. So just kind of like an overview of this problem. So in spring of 2023, 70% of teachers in the United States reported that their students were misbehaving more. A lot of this is thought to be maybe post-COVID issues in behavior, but also just a change in cultures of schools around the nation. And when I was looking at the most prevalent problems at my research site, and surveying teachers and trying to see what kind of changes I could make and what kind of solutions I could find to issues that were really grating at my community, 80% of the teachers surveyed at my site felt the same as the nation, that they were feeling overwhelmed with this change and shift in student behavior. So that inspired me to center my action research project around this particular issue of student misbehavior and what could be done to maybe shift this change. So I centered my action research project on two factors that had to do with staff. So I felt at the beginning that a combination of teacher professional development and teacher collaboration could bring a change in student behavior. So I focused on launching that professional development and fostering that collaboration, and then studied data on how that affected student behavior. So in terms of my research design, the first part of my research design was that I tracked student discipline data to create a benchmark of certain behaviors where they were in my school community, tracked a lot of data about location, time of day, specific behaviors. And then after that, I launched professional development for teachers, specifically professional development that had to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that kind of perspective could have an effect on classroom management, different strategies that had to do with leading with humility and empathy and trying to change school culture in a way that would affect behavior. After that professional development, based on some of those strategies, I created a teacher team to help analyze the current discipline data that I had been tracking, develop some targeted intervention for specific behaviors that discipline data was showing, and try and kind of incorporate some of those strategies that the professional development was encouraging. And then after we met as a teacher collaboration team and all of us experienced that professional development, we kind of launched some plans created by our teacher team and then continued to track data to see the strengths and weaknesses of our plan and kind of make changes and additions as we went on. So that was just the overview of the research design. So throughout this process, as I kind of mentioned in my previous slide, part of my data collection was to use discipline logs to track data. So those logs included disciplinary infraction, time of day, location, and a lot of different information based on the discipline so that we could just track patterns and also progress to see if some of these interventions were working. And then again, because a root part of my problem was like teachers feeling overwhelmed and unsure of how to change certain things in their classrooms. I also use a thematic analysis of certain teacher feedback surveys. So I took teacher surveys before professional development and after the professional development to kind of see if that was effective and what else we could do going forward to kind of try and solve this problem and think about what solutions were most effective. So there was a lot of results that were determined by this study. I tracked data for a lot of different disciplinary elements of behavior, like I was saying in my other slides. But I do feel like this chart was the most relevant, as you can see here that at the beginning of this project, so I started tracking data in November. you can see, especially in the late to class behavior, that behavior had a particularly high amount of infractions, and you can see that it dropped steeply. That was one of the behaviors that our team really targeted and tried to create interventions to solve, and you can see that that one dropped steeply. So in terms of just the results and conclusions we can draw from this, that targeted intervention was able to decrease certain behaviors. As you can see, there were other behaviors that also decreased. In terms of disrespectful classroom behavior, that one started at 200 and decreased to about 100. That was another behavior that we targeted. And then I also just want to mention that inappropriate phone usage, that was a behavior that we had not yet targeted. We hadn't created a plan for that. And that was one of the behaviors that didn't fall. So this teacher team, like we really wanted to focus on specific behaviors so that we could really see the effect of these interventions. And based on the data that I collected, the behaviors that we specifically targeted were able to see a drop, but the behaviors that weren't targeted did not necessarily see a drop. So overall, that was a pretty significant conclusion that I was able to draw from this action research study. So in terms of just like limitations of this study, I do think that we see progress in this, that this combination of professional development and teacher teams, we were able to see a positive change in behavior. But I do like to say that it's progress, but with uncertainty, because in terms of reporting, with such a large different group of people reporting, the discipline log, like I was the manager of the log, but a lot of the disciplinary infractions were collected by different teachers, staff, and administrators throughout my building. And with that, I know that there can only be so much accuracy in reporting, in that I have to rely on teachers to be consistent, that they're always reporting every infraction, which I can never really know in the end if that is occurring. And then also different people have different perspectives on what is exactly considered a behavior infraction. Some people might be over-reporting certain behaviors. Some people might be under-reporting certain behaviors. So I do feel that progress was definitely made, but with a little bit of uncertainty in that I was limited by the accuracy of the reporting. In terms of the implications of this study, I do feel that there is this ongoing debate in student discipline as to whether we need to increase the severity of punishments, that students need to learn the power of discipline, and in that they should be punished more severely. There's a pool of people who feel that way. And then there's another pool that believes that we need to be more flexible with students, that we need to cater more to the culture and mental health of the modern student and be a little bit more flexible with these disciplinary policies. And I think that is often seen as the debate between severity and flexibility. But based on this action research plan, I feel like what I was able to discover is that really the most powerful solution is consistency. It doesn't necessarily mean that the punishments need to be stricter or harsher. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to take away all disciplinary tools that have to do with punishments, but instead we just need to make sure that there's consistency. When students understand what's expected of them, most of them want to meet that expectation, but there has to be that follow through on those expectations so that they're clear and they know what's expected. And consistency is really, based on my research, the most powerful tool in changing student behavior. In terms of future professional applications of what I learned from this project, I definitely feel like that, like I was saying in my last slide, I did really feel that this element of consistency in addressing student behaviors was something I could apply to future behavior issues at an administrative level. I do feel like creating collaboration with teachers and kind of empowering teachers to have a voice in what changes are made was a really powerful tool in making these changes. Teachers are a lot of the people who are enforcing these policies on a daily basis. So communicating with them, empowering them to be part of the change instead of just kind of voicing things from the top down was a helpful strategy I think could be used going forward. Planning strategic professional development, that was like the catalyst for a lot of this change, was professional development. So that I think was something I could take forward. And then database problem solving. We wouldn't have been able to target specific behaviors that were problematic if we didn't have the data to find those behaviors, and we wouldn't have been able to see progress if we didn't check that data throughout and see that our plan was succeeding. So I do think that database problem solving is definitely a future professional application I could take with me going forward. So that is